Okay? And the National Relations Act is also called the Wagner Act because Mr. Wagner is one of the senators that pushed it through. And what this did was it gave more rights to unions. Labor unions to protect the workers, okay? And it legally allowed strikes. So it protected the rights of workers to go on strike and unions to call for those strikes. So this was a program that was specifically designed to aid the laborer, the worker. It didn't support the rich business owner, it supported the worker, the person that was actually doing the job. All right, the next one is going to be the Social Security Act. Or the SSA, okay? So the Social Security Act is going to tax workers, and then it gave the money collected in that tax to elderly and disabled. And the purpose there was then older people would retire and those jobs would open up for younger people. So it would create more jobs for younger people. And younger people typically have a larger family to support. They typically have a mortgage. By the time you're older, the idea is you've paid off your mortgage, you don't have kids living at home anymore, and you can live off a reduced wage. Or you also have savings. So Social Security was never designed to be a paycheck. Social Security was designed to be a assistance with already saved up money. It wasn't ever supposed to be lived on. It was always supposed to be something in addition to savings that people have created for themselves. Now, the next one we're going to talk about is the National Housing Act. Now, the National Housing Act is going to encourage better homes to be created for poor Americans. And the way they did that was it would give a loan, special loans or a stipend to construction companies that were willing to make affordable, nice housing and apartments that would go to poorer families. So it reduced the cost of living for people that were in the most need for affordable living. Okay. The next one we're going to talk about is the Farm Security Administration. Right. Farm Security Administration is going to give money to tenant farmers. Tenant farmers did not own their land, so this gave money to them to buy their own land. And this gave a lot of people the ability to raise themselves out of poverty, to be their own boss, which is big in farming. And most tenant farmers this time were people of color, so it was a program that did help a lot of minorities. Next one, the Fair Labor Standards Act. And what this did was it protected the safety of workers. It gave a lot more power to the unions to demand safer working conditions. It outlawed child labor on the federal level. And it also restricted to a standard 40-hour a week work week. So that became a federal national standard. Now, all of these things were great stuff. These were all government-created, government-supported programs. And this was criticized heavily by many conservatives, because conservatives feel like the government shouldn't be spending. They feel like these are all things that the individuals should be doing, and the government shouldn't be backing it up. Now, FDR does all these things, but the biggest issue that FDR, his big mistake in this, happens FDR's mistake. The biggest thing that FDR is going to be criticized for under the New Deal is called court packing. Okay. Now, the president is the only person that is allowed to suggest Supreme Court members. He's the only person that is allowed to nominate Supreme Court members. Now, they have to be approved by the Congress, but only the president is allowed to do this. So what FDR did is he suggested increasing the number of Supreme Court justices. And since he would be the person that gets to pick them all, he would then be able to pick people that would support all of these programs. Okay, since a lot of conservatives were filing courts cases about the legality of these things, and the idea was, is the government allowed to make all of this? Is the government allowed to step and create regulation like this for businesses? Okay, because all of this almost required a business to pay, especially Social Security Act, that required an additional taxes, and a lot of those taxes sometimes are paid by the business. Same thing for Fair Labor Standards Act. I mean, can the government tell a business what they're allowed to do? Can the government tell the business that they have to respect the rights of a outside organization and allow their workers to not work? Are they allowed to do that? Just allow them to strike and not fire them? And that's what the Wagner Act and Social Security Act, this was seen as overstepping the boundaries of the government. Okay? And so in order to counteract these court cases, FDR decides, hey, I will just increase the number of Supreme Court justices. That way, all these new people that I get to pick will help me support my programs. Because he saw if there were more justices to help support the New Deal. Now, ultimately, this plan to increase, to court pack, it failed. Okay, plan failed. It didn't happen. But a lot of Americans, even liberal Americans, saw this as him trying to get too much power. Is this a president that was trying to make himself a dictator? That was the question that was put in place by this court packing. But ultimately, the plan here, the New Deal, was threefold. The main goals of the New Deal, okay, the goals of the New Deal were, okay, relief, recovery, and reform. Okay, those were the ultimate goals of this New Deal. To provide relief to Americans that need it the most, to provide an ability for the economy to recover, and to reform the United States to make sure it never happens again. Okay, so let's look at this. Okay, now that bank holiday, closing the banks for a little bit so they can fix themselves. This is an idea for recovery. Okay, this is a recovery program. Okay, FDIC, this is reform. Okay, that is going to change the way things are banked, change banks in order to prevent banks failing again. Okay, the CCC. This is going to be a recovery program. It gave the ability for these people to have jobs and recover. The TBA, once again, this is going to be a recovery program. It gave jobs in order for people to recover from unemployment. It gave electricity to this area for farmers to recover from poverty. SEC, okay, this is definitely reform as well. All right, is making sure that that stock market crash doesn't happen again. Agricultural Adjustment Administration, it gave money, so this is going to be a relief program. Okay, it provided relief to the farming industry. Same thing with the Federal Emergency Relief Administration. This is a relief program. When we look over at the second New Deal, National Relations Act, this is going to be a reform. Okay, it completely changed the way business was being run. Social Security Act, this is a relief program. Okay, but it was a lasting relief program, so it can kind of be considered a reform as well, or even a recovery. But since it immediately started giving money to people, it would be considered a relief program at that time. National Housing Act, this is going to be a recovery program. Right? It wasn't instantaneous, it was something that lasted a little bit longer. Farm Security Administration gave money. This is going to be a relief program, but also a recovery program because it is a long-term thing in order to perpetuate and get out of poverty. Okay, this is more of a teaching a man to fish, giving him a fishing pole so he can fish for the rest of his life kind of deal. But it is a gift of money for those tenant farmers. And then the Fair Labor Standards Act, this is going to be a reform program as well. So the main goals of our New Deal here are going to be the 3 R's, right? Relief, recovery, reform. So in essence, that is the New Deal. All right, circling back, the New Deal was a plan for FDR to fix the Great Depression, and it required the government to get involved in economics, in the economy of the United States. This was the opposite of what Hoover was doing at the time. So let's go ahead and write ourselves as a reminder. This is the opposite of what Hoover did. Okay, President Hoover specifically did not want the government to get involved. Okay, so it's the opposite of what Hoover did. And how he did this, he created the bank holiday, he created the alphabet soup programs, and then the second New Deal, which created a lot more recovery and reform movements. His big mistake in it is he did try to gain too much power, and after that movement, he kind of slowed down on a lot of his legislation. Ultimately, the New Deal did not end the Great Depression, okay? The New Deal did not end the Great Depression. World War II is what eventually ended the Great Depression.